So IGN um, is doing this best video game of all time bracket. It's separate from their like top 100 games of all time. Uh, thank God, because there is some really interesting results so far through the first couple rounds. We're on the round of 16, but we can kind of just go through some of these. I think overall the issue is, first of all, there's some games that I feel like are completely missing. I'm not sure what the exact criteria was to get seeded. The other thing is some seeds seem really off. And then the actual results, the voting, which I understand it's Instagram, it's on the website, which tends to skew younger, right? It's a younger audience, younger demographic. The modern games are just like wiping the floor with a lot of the classics, which is kind of sad. But you can't really get the idea through someone's head. Is like, don't vote if you haven't played both games. Not even I'm saying, oh, have you beat this game? But like, if you haven't played it ever, it's hard to take it seriously. Like, let's just start. I'm going to start on the right side of the bracket here. So you can see probably the best, greatest platformer of all time, Super Mario World. First seed, makes sense. Gets absolutely destroyed by Super Smash Brothers Ultimate. Fine, I get it. Super Smash Brothers Ultimate, people love that game. But I mean, Super Mario World, SNES, still widely considered one of the best platformers of all time, stands up really well. I mean, it still looks good because it's that classic kind of 2D art animation. 60-40, like that just brings a tear to my eye. The next one, The Last of Us, great game, one of the best storytelling, one of the best narratives, but also just the best use of storytelling in a video game probably ever. That deserves to be on there. 8's probably a little low. I'm not going to complain. Unfortunately, one of my favorite games is going up against it as well. Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. I love that game. However, probably and it probably is my favorite Metal Gear Solid, but from a perspective of what game means more, Metal Gear Solid 2 is probably higher. And then of course, Metal Gear Solid on the PlayStation 1 should be up there. It's neither of those are even on this list, which is really surprising. And I don't think there's you always hear, oh, one game per franchise, which I always hate because, man, if the franchise is good and it has a ton of good games, like how can you limit it if they're supposed to be some of the best games of all time? So when I inevitably do a top 10 list or whatever, I'm sure you're going to see multiple games from the same franchise for sure. Anyway, that's fine. Last of Us 2, it beat Super Smash Brothers, so at least there's some redemption there. But I mean, Super Mario World should be probably going all the way to the semis at least. Then you've got Halo 2, Mass Effect 2. I mean, I get Halo. I get why people love Halo 2. It's the best version of Halo. For a lot of people, it still had that kind of party element where you can play it together in the same room. And it just played really, really well. Mass Effect 2, probably one of my favorite games, but I can get why it can lose there. That's fine. 12 seems to be a bit of a low seed for that. And then Grand Theft Auto 5 beating Uncharted 2. Again, Uncharted 2, that's my favorite Uncharted game. Can't really complain about it getting beat even that bad by Grand Theft Auto 5. The sheer popularity, I mean, the online version, people are still playing it. They love it. I mean, it's going on its third generation now. I get it. And even the single player is the best Grand Theft Auto single player, in my opinion. I mean, Vice City was good, but just the way that it switches between the three characters, I thought was really good. So not going to complain about that. And even beating Halo 2, I mean, I'd probably skew towards Halo 2 there, but again, not going to complain. I do hope The Last of Us can beat it just based on what that means, but I would understand if it made it through. Moving down, Street Fighter 2 loses to Pokemon Yellow. I don't have a dog in that fight. I mean, I loved Street Fighter 2 back on the Genesis, Super Street Fighter 2 in particular, but comes down to it, it's a pretty rudimentary fighting game now. I mean, at the time it was that and Mortal Kombat. They were both great, but Pokemon Yellow, although I'm not exactly sure which Pokemon that is. I think, is that one of the new ones? But I get the love for Pokemon, so no problem there. This one's bad. I mean, Batman Arkham series is great. Arkham City is the best one in the series, but come on, man. Super Mario 64. I was a PlayStation guy, and even I loved Super Mario 64. It's probably, I mean, it was the beginning of the 3D platformer success. I mean, it did it better than anything for the time, and still, yeah, the camera sucks, but still holds up pretty well. I mean, the music is fantastic. It's just, it's got to be Arkham City there. And then Arkham City beating Pokemon Yellow. I mean, sure, I guess it is a good game. Dark Souls, Shadow of the Colossus. Again, I love Shadow of the Colossus, but I get Dark Souls beating it. I'm not a glutton for punishment. I don't do a lot of the Soulsborne games, and if I do, it takes me forever. But I totally get why that would go through. No problems there. Half-Life 2 versus Rise of the Tomb Raider. This is a huge upset, obviously. I mean, I think the seeding for Half-Life 2 is good. Rise of the Tomb Raider being at 15. Not sure it should be on this list, but it's really low. But the fact that it beat that, that just tells, it's some small margin of victory, but it just, to me, screams, oh, I haven't played Half-Life 2, which, you know, that's a PC game. You can get it on Steam super cheap and play it. I think it still holds up really well. It's got the gravity gun. I mean, I watched my roommate play it constantly in college. Probably one of his favorite games of all time. Like, how does that not beat Rise of the Tomb Raider? Again, a fine game, but it's nothing special compared to Half-Life 2. Dark Souls beats that. Makes sense. At least there's some retribution. Another just absolute terrible upset, Super Metroid. Created a genre along with Castlevania, which we'll get to in a second. The Metroidvania, terrific platform action shooter, side scroller, loses to Apex Legends, a good to great online shooting game, first person shooter, which hilariously enough goes up against its older brother Titanfall 2 and loses. Which, I mean, I like Titanfall 2. It's one of the few first person shooters I really liked. But just the love I hear for Animal Crossing, like, that is kind of a surprise. And then, yeah, going up against Apex Legends, it's kind of like, that's one where I'd almost be like, oh, I get why you have the argument for franchise, one per franchise or something like that, because theoretically they could be the same franchise. Bloodborne, yeah, that makes sense to beat Alex. Tetris has to win. I'm surprised that's not like a top 2 seed. And then Bloodborne beating that, probably a surprise, but I get it. I mean, Bloodborne is probably loved even more than the Dark Souls games at this point, even though it's only been on one platform so far, or if you count PS5 too. But I can see why that beat Tetris. I mean, Tetris is great. I think everyone thinks Tetris is great. It's just no one's favorite game. So I can see why Bloodborne would beat that. I mean, I could sit down and play Tetris right now and be happy. Hades, Metroid Prime. Yeah, I get that. Metroid Prime is pretty cool. It's one of the first kind of first-person shooters that's primarily not a shooter. It's a puzzle game. I mean, we're not talking like an adventure game like Myst. I mean, it's still got the elements of shooting things, and it just looks phenomenal even now. Can't wait till they do like a Switch version. Super Mario Brothers 3, thank God that one definitely should be in there, and it's making it all the way to the round of 16. That's cool. Castlevania Symphony of Night, I feel like that should have beat Resident Evil 4. I get the love for Resident Evil 4. I liked it. That's the first Resident Evil that I played all the way through. But Castlevania Symphony of Night was just on another level for the time. I think it's definitely even thought of better in retrospect, because at the time, side scrollers weren't what people were looking for on the PlayStation. It was like, oh, I want to see 3D. Ironically, now those are the games, the side scrollers now hold up a lot better. I mean, it still has really nice art. It's got some cool music, and of course, just the level design and the RPG elements were just kind of genre making, along with Super Metroid, like that. The Metroidvanias are still today a really popular genre. So I feel like that should have won, but it wasn't going to. Neither of them would beat Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. Which this is a big pet peeve. Like Final Fantasy VII, a lot of people's favorite games. Reason I bought a PlayStation back in the day. I just wanted to play that so much. That was like my first RPG, really. No problem with it losing to Breath of the Wild, but it just shouldn't have been a 15 seed. Like it's got to be higher. It shouldn't have to go up against probably what's going to win this, I would say. I think that's the favorite. I mean, people just love it. It's contemporary. And I mean, everyone says it. I mean, it is just good. I haven't heard of, as they say in soccer, it hasn't put a foot wrong. So it's just disappointing to see Final Fantasy VII taken out in the first round with such a low seed. Jumping to the other side, Doom. I'm not sure which Doom this is, but regardless, probably beats the Inside. I think this is supposed to be the new Doom, not the one from like 92. However, it would make sense if it was the 92 Doom, because that was the first kind of big first-person shooter at the time, to kind of really go into the mainstream. You know, along with Mortal Kombat around there, like, oh, it was also just super gory and bloody, which was just a new thing that graphics could even kind of portray that. However, the next one, I mean, this was a tough matchup for sure. I'm surprised that The Witcher 3 beat it by so much, but Diablo 2, fantastic game. But I mean, I love The Witcher 3. I would have voted for that. Glad it beat Doom. We'll see how it does in the next round. Minecraft, not a fan, but I totally get why it beats Fable 2. I'm not a huge fan of that either. BioShock, sure, I'm glad it beat Overwatch. Minecraft, again, not going to complain that that is one, just based on the pure popularity of it. And, you know, I think it is a cool game and a cool idea. We're basically like video game Legos, and then you add in all the video game elements. Like, that's pretty cool. This was a surprise. I think people love both of these games, but again, Ocarina of Time is one of those games that, at least in my generation, it's considered one of, like, a lot of people have that as their favorite game. Elder Scrolls 5 maybe should have had a higher seed, but it's unfortunate that Ocarina of Time lost in such an early round. And again, it got upset pretty handily. Just not a good matchup, I guess, but there's no question to me that that's a better game than Skyrim is. Civ 4 versus Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. I don't even know why Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag is on there. I don't think it's particularly great. I don't think it's the best Assassin's Creed game. I'd probably go, speaking of contemporary bias, but I'd probably go Odyssey. But I just don't know if that any of those games needed to be on the list. And then I just don't think enough people have played Civ 4, because I mean 15%, but that's one of the ultimate real-time strategy world building games, and it just got obliterated by overall a ho-hum kind of open world action game. At least Skyrim beat that in the next round. I mean, I guess that's good, but I don't even see why that's on here. StarCraft God of War, again, a really unfortunate matchup. I mean, StarCraft is tremendous. I think this is the new one, maybe. I don't know if it's the old one from the 90s or early 2000s, but I feel like it's probably made a bigger impact. I mean, I love God of War. It's great, but man, 90%, that seems high. That just tells me not enough people have played StarCraft, or maybe that genre is dying out. I mean, I haven't played an RTS for a really long time, and based on the last two results, that seems to hold true. Or maybe there's this type of people don't go to IGN. Portal 2 versus The Sims. Yeah, that's an easy one. Portal 2. God of War beating Portal 2. Probably shouldn't be by that margin, but I would probably go that way too. Terrific game, both of them. Journey Dishonored. Journey, people swear by this game as like an experience. I think that's one thing that kind of hurts it. Like, I liked it. I enjoyed going through it, but it's not a game that like I ever want to play again, because there's not really gameplay. You know, it's pretty simple. It's kind of one of those walking simulators, as they call it. It's just very beautifully done. And then Dishonored, I mean, I prefer the second one, but I get why you put the first one in there. It's a good game too. Sure. But that's pretty surprising, just that big of an upset. Call of Duty versus GoldenEye. I mean, I'm GoldenEye all day. Call of Duty 4, I get it. It was like the first big kind of Xbox 360, PS3 era first person shooter. It did, they're not in World War II anymore. The online multiplayer was huge. I mean, the campaign was fine, but man, GoldenEye 007, if you were alive during that time and playing video games, like it's hard to beat in terms of the nostalgia factor. I get it. You wouldn't want to go back and play it right now. Those controls are terrible if you've ever played a modern first person shooter. But at the time, oh man, it was so good. And plus, even though it was 2 years after the movie came out, it was cool to have that license. And, I can just think of the music. It's got that Eric Serra soundtrack from the movie. Just to me, that's just a disservice to it. But I get Call of Duty 4. I mean, Call of Duty is one of the biggest franchises of all time, and this is kind of the thing that reinvigorated it on the modern consoles. So makes sense. This is probably the worst. Burnout 3 Takedown, sure. It's a good racing, arcade racing, crashing simulator, but Chrono Trigger is probably considered the greatest, at least JRPG of all time, if not just role-playing game in general. And it just got completely upset here. I'm fine with that seating as a 3, but man, it got beat by Burnout 3. I don't get it. I don't get it at all. World of Warcraft and Fortnite, that's a good matchup. Thank God World of Warcraft won. And thank God it beat Burnout 3. That if this was 5 years ago, World of Warcraft would probably easily be in the semifinals, but we'll see. Fallout New Vegas, League of Legends. Sure, New Vegas. Coder beats Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 is a fantastic game, but I don't think even if you aren't into skateboarding, it's really good, but it just doesn't have that extra interest because of that. And really, if you look at everything on the list, that's the only thing you would even consider a sports game. So the fact that it made this list is probably impressive enough in itself. And it actually kind of held its own against Coder, which is not only a great RPG, but also is Star Wars. So I think that's a good sign. Sucks Coder lost to New Vegas. Again, we have that remake coming out that was announced at the PlayStation event. Maybe after that, this game would beat New Vegas, which is a good game. But to me, I think it's such a small margin. Like, I get it. It's fine. San Andreas beat probably what's considered the best Mario Kart or even just kart racer in general game of all time. Pretty surprising to me. I mean, San Andreas is good. But if you're talking about games that don't hold up well, like going back and playing it is not particularly fun, especially compared to the new Grand Theft Auto. And then Mario Kart 8 just controls and plays like a dream. And it's just the perfected version of kart racing. I mean, my personal favorite is still Crash Team Racing. I like the remake and everything too, but I can't argue against Mario Kart 8 for sure. So that's a pretty big surprise that it was that big, especially for a game that's not contemporary. And then Red Dead Redemption, which is interesting that I'm surprised it's not Red Dead Redemption 2. Maybe it's supposed to be, but beats Borderlands. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I like the first Red Dead Redemption story a lot better, but the gameplay of the second one is just hands down better, like no comparison. And by the end of the Red Dead Redemption 2, I mean, the story gets really good. It's just there's a lot of Arthur Morgan standing around and not being the main character. Essentially, you're an observer until kind of the end, which is an interesting narrative to take. But San Andreas beating that. Again, narrow margin, but pretty surprising. So I think we'll come back maybe when it gets to the semis or the finals before they reveal the actual winner, and we can take a look at what wins. But yeah, just my observations on this and my not so subtle critique of the younger demographics that are voting on this. So yeah, see you in a few when this is all done at the end of the month.